Look, I have been working in xenobiological threat assessment for approximately 17 of your Earth years, and I thought I had seen every bureaucratic disaster imaginable. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The kind of wrong that makes you question whether the universe has a sense of humor or just hates everyone equally. My name is Vortax, and I am a Kelmorian. We are the galaxy's premier record keepers, administrators, and generally the species that keeps everyone else from accidentally blowing up half the known systems through sheer incompetence. We have 4 arms, 3 eyes, and exactly 0 patience for nonsense. Which is why what I am about to tell you still makes my secondary hearts palpitate with what you humans call second-hand embarrassment. The Galactic Monster Containment Unit, or GMCU as literally nobody calls it because that sounds ridiculous, is exactly what it sounds like. We hunt things. Big things. Scary things. Things with too many teeth, not enough eyes, or far too many of both. Things that make grown Krallian warriors, those 8-foot-tall reptilian nightmares, wet themselves and call for their brood mothers. Naturally, working for the GMCU requires extensive training. Years of it, physical conditioning that would make your Olympic athletes look like they spend their days eating paste. Psychological evaluations, weapons certifications in approximately 47 different combat systems. Oh, and you need to be, actually capable of surviving contact with creatures that can tear through reinforced titanium like it is wet tissue paper. So when the new recruit transfer came through my terminal that morning, I almost choked on my nutrition gel. The file read, Kira Mendez, human, female, 5 feet 4 inches tall, 120 pounds, previous assignment, administrative filing in the Diplomatic Corps, subsection Q, Department of Extremely Boring Paperwork that nobody reads. I blinked all 3 of my eyes in sequence, which is the Kelmorian equivalent of a very confused stare. There had to be a mistake. Had to be. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely 3 decades since first contact, and they were not exactly known for their combat prowess. Sure, they were surprisingly durable for a species that evolved on a death world, but the GMC, that was for the big boys, the Krallians, the Thoraxian hive soldiers, the Volthene who could literally breathe plasma, not someone who previously specialized in organizing interoffice memos. I pulled up her file image. She looked, well, incredibly average. Dark hair pulled back in what you call a ponytail. Brown eyes that seemed just a bit too wide, like she was perpetually surprised by everything. A smile that suggested she had absolutely no idea what she had just signed up for. She was wearing the standard beige uniform of the Diplomatic Corps, which, trust me, is the least threatening outfit in the entire galaxy. It makes you look like ambulatory oatmeal. I immediately sent a priority message to my supervisor, Administrator Quelix. Sir, there appears to be an error in the personnel transfer system. We have received a human from the Diplomatic Corps instead of, I assume, literally anyone qualified. The response came back in 4 seconds. No error. Transfer approved by High Command. Report her to Field Commander Brutax for orientation. I sat there, all 4 of my hands hovering over my workstation, trying to process this information. High Command approved this? The same High Command that once spent 6 months debating the proper shade of gray for warning labels. They just decided to throw a file clerk into the most dangerous division in the entire Galactic Defense Force? I sent another message. Sir, with all due respect, she weighs less than a Krallian's breakfast. Her combat experience is literally 0. This seems inadvisable. Transfer is approved. Stop questioning orders, Vortax. Fantastic. Just fantastic. I was going to be filling out death benefit paperwork by the end of the week, and I had just reorganized my filing system. 3 days later, Kira Mendez arrived at Station Omega, our primary operations hub located in the Helix sector. The station itself is a massive construct, approximately 50 miles in diameter, bristling with weapons, hangar bays, and containment cells for the various nightmares we pull off planets before they can eat all the locals. I met her at Docking Bay 7, clipboard in hand, ready to process what I assumed would be a very short career. She stepped off the transport shuttle, hauling a single duffel bag that looked almost as big as she was. She was smiling, actually smiling, like she was arriving at summer camp instead of a military installation where the mortality rate hovered around 15% annually. "Hi," she said, extending her hand in that bizarre human greeting ritual. "I am Kira, you must be Vortax. The transfer coordinator, right? Oh wow, You really do have 4 arms. That must make multitasking so much easier. I always wished I had more arms. Do you know how hard it is to carry groceries and open doors at the same time? I stared at her extended hand for approximately 3 seconds before remembering that humans expect you to grasp it and shake. I complied with one of my left hands, trying to ignore the fact that she was treating this like a social visit. Yes, I am Vortex. I process personnel transfers and casualty reports. Currently, I am expecting to be filing one of the latter regarding you within approximately 72 hours. Her smile did not waver. If anything, it got bigger. Oh, you are funny. I like you already. So, where do I report? I am super excited to get started. This is such a great opportunity. I mean, I loved filing reports about trade negotiations for fungal spore exports, but this seems way more interesting. I made a notation on my datapad. Possible psychological instability. Recommend immediate evaluation. Follow me, I said, turning toward the interior corridors. I will take you to Commander Brutax. He handles all field operations and new recruit orientation. Fair warning, he is a Kralian, which means he is large, aggressive, and considers eating subordinates who disappoint him to be within acceptable management practices. Oh, that is probably just a cultural thing, right? Kira said, jogging slightly to keep up with my walking pace. I read about Kralians in the xenoanthropology database. They value strength and directness. I can work with that. I am very direct. My last supervisor said I was too direct, actually, apparently telling the Vultian ambassador that his proposed trade agreement was basically legalized theft was not diplomatic enough. We walked through the main concourse, passing various species in GMCU uniforms. A squad of Thoraxian hive soldiers marched past, their chitinous armor gleaming under the overhead lights. Each one stood 7 feet tall and could probably punch through a concrete wall without noticing. Kira waved at them. They did not wave back, mostly because Thoraxians do not have a concept of friendly gesturing. We passed Containment Cell 14, where a captured void serpent was currently trying to dissolve its way through force field barriers with acidic venom. The creature was approximately 40 feet long, covered in obsidian scales, and had 3 rows of teeth that rotated like chainsaw blades. Oh wow, Kira said, stopping to look through the observation window. That is horrifying. What is it? A void serpent, I said. Captured last week on Praxis 6 after it ate 17 colonists. We are studying it before termination. Huh, she said, tilting her head like she was examining a particularly interesting flower arrangement. Do they always drool like that? Seems like a design flaw. If I was evolution, I would have fixed that. I made another note. No apparent survival instinct. Possible neurological damage. We arrived at Commander Brutax's office, which was less an office and more a trophy room filled with the mounted heads, claws, and various body parts of things he had personally killed. The centerpiece was a skull the size of a small transport vehicle, belonging to something called a dread maw, which had terrorized an entire sector before Brutax hunted it down and killed it with what he claimed was just a combat knife and pure spite. Brutax himself was behind his desk, reviewing mission reports on a holographic display. He was, in typical Kralian fashion, absolutely massive. 8 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to use as landing pads, scales the color of dried blood, and eyes that glowed a faint amber. His teeth were visible even when his mouth was closed, which was a fun evolutionary adaptation that said "I can and will eat you" in every language simultaneously. He looked up as we entered, those amber eyes focusing on Kira with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "Commander Brutax," I said, maintaining proper protocol. "This is Recruit Kira Mendez, transferred from the Diplomatic Corps as per High Command orders." Brutax stared at her for approximately 10 seconds of silence. Then he made a sound that was somewhere between a growl and a laugh. "This is a joke, yes?" he rumbled, his voice like gravel being crushed in a compactor. "High Command sent me a snack-sized diplomat as a joke. Very funny. Where is the real recruit?" Kira stepped forward, apparently unconcerned by the fact that Brutax could probably bite her entire head off in one snap.
"Hi, Commander.
"I am the real recruit. I know I do not look like much, but I am a really fast learner, and I am great at following instructions. Well, mostly. Sometimes I have questions."
Okay.
"I have a lot of questions, but I promise I will work really hard." Brutax blinked, which for a Kralian involves a secondary eyelid sliding horizontally across the eye. It is deeply unsettling to watch. "Vortex?" he said slowly. Explain to me why I should not simply eat this creature right now and save us all the paperwork when something else eats her later. High Command approved the transfer, sir, I said, holding up my datapad like it was a shield. It is official, signed by 3 separate administrators. Administrators. Ritax spat the word like it tasted bad. Soft beings who have never seen real combat, making decisions that get real soldiers killed. Fine. She is your responsibility. Cortax. You will oversee her orientation, her training, and when she inevitably fails spectacularly, you will file the incident report. Wait, sir, I am supposed to be in requisitions. I cannot just… New assignment. Effective immediately. Congratulations. I stared at him with all 3 eyes simultaneously, which is the Kelmorian equivalent of screaming internally while maintaining professional composure. Kira looked between us, still smiling. So, when do I start? Do I get a cool uniform? Please tell me there are cool uniforms. The diplomatic corps uniforms were so boring. Beige should be illegal. Brutax made that growling laugh sound again.
Humans. You people colonized a death world and somehow survived long enough to develop spaceflight despite having no natural weapons, fragile bones, and the survival instincts of a suicidal moth. Fine, training starts at dawn cycle tomorrow, 0600 hours. Do not be late. If you are late, I will have you cleaning waste reclamation units for a month. Dismissed. We left the office, Kira practically bouncing with excitement while I contemplated the various ways my career had just imploded. This is going to be amazing, she said, as we walked toward the recruit barracks. I mean, it is dangerous, sure, but it is way better than filing reports about mineral rights disputes in the Crab Nebula. That stuff was mind-numbing. How hard can monster hunting be, really? You just shoot them or stab them or whatever, right? I stopped walking. How hard can it be? I repeated, my voice climbing in pitch despite my best efforts. We hunt creatures that can survive in the vacuum of space. Things that eat starship hulls for breakfast. Beings that exist partially in other dimensions. Last month, a Thoraxian squad lost 3 soldiers to something we still cannot identify because it ate them so completely that there was not enough biomass left to analyze. Huh, Kira said, nodding thoughtfully. So, pretty hard then. Good to know. I will definitely study up before tomorrow. Is there a manual or something? I pulled up the training manual on my datapad and transferred it to hers. This is the Monster Hunter Field Manual. It is 4,732 pages long. It covers threat classification, combat protocols, survival techniques, and last rites procedures for 643 different galactic cultures. Perfect, she said, looking at her pad with disturbing enthusiasm. I will read it tonight. I am a super fast reader. One time I read an entire economics textbook in 3 hours. Though to be fair, I did not understand most of it, but I definitely read all the words. We reached the barracks, a long corridor of individual quarters for GMCU personnel. I assigned her to room 47, which had most recently been occupied by a Velathine trooper who transferred out after losing an arm to a spike horror. The room had been cleaned, but you could still see the scorch marks on the wall where his plasma torch had misfired during a panic attack. Here is your quarters, I said. Standard issue. Bed, storage locker, personal sanitation unit. Meals are served in the commissary at 0700, 1200, and 1800 hours. Do not wander into restricted areas. Do not touch anything labeled biohazard. Do not under any circumstances attempt to pet the containment specimens. Would people actually try to pet the monsters? Kira asked, looking genuinely curious. 3 recruits last year, 2 survived with minor injuries. 1 is still in psychological rehabilitation. Noted. No petting the murder creatures. Got it. I left her there, returned to my office, and immediately began drafting her incident report template. It was just a matter of time. The next morning, I arrived at training facility, Gamma, at 0545 hours to observe orientation. The facility was a massive arena-style space, with variable gravity controls, environmental simulators, and enough weapons to start a small war. Several small wars. Actually, a group of new recruits had assembled, approximately 20 individuals from various species. 2 Krallians, both young but already imposing, 5 Thoraxians moving in perfect unison as their hive mind coordinated, a trio of Volthane in light combat armor, several others from species I recognized but could not name off the top of my head,
And Kira, standing at approximately half the height of everyone else, wearing her brand new GMCU uniform, which was black with red piping and actually did look significantly cooler than Diplomatic Corps beige. She had her hair pulled back in a tight braid and was stretching her legs like she was about to run a marathon. Commander Brutax entered from the opposite end of the facility, followed by several training instructors. He surveyed the assembled recruits with an expression that suggested he was mentally calculating which ones would survive the week. "Welcome to the Monster Hunter Corps," he announced, his voice carrying across the entire facility without need for amplification. "You are here because someone somewhere decided you might be useful. I am here to determine if they were correct or catastrophically wrong. Most of you will fail. Some of you will quit. A few of you might actually die, though we try avoid that because the paperwork is annoying." He began pacing in front of the assembled group. "The GMCU exists for one purpose: to hunt and eliminate xenobiological threats that conventional military forces cannot handle. We are the last line of defense between civilized space and things that should not exist. We do not run. We do not surrender. We do not leave teammates behind. If you cannot accept those terms, leave now." Nobody moved. "Good. First exercise, endurance assessment. You will run the perimeter of this facility 50 times. That is approximately 100 kilometers. You have 4 hours. Anyone who cannot complete this is dismissed from the program immediately. Begin." The recruits took off running. The Krallians and Thoraxians immediately pulled ahead with their longer strides and enhanced muscular systems. The Volthian activated their plasma-enhanced movement systems and glided forward with minimal effort. The others fell into various paces based on their species' physiology. Kira started running at what appeared to be a very moderate pace. Not slow, not fast, just steady. I watched from the observation deck, taking notes. After 1 hour, the Krallians were maintaining their lead. The Thoraxians were still in perfect formation. Several of the other recruits were starting to show signs of fatigue. One of the smaller species had already dropped out. Kira was still running at exactly the same pace. She had not sped up. She had not slowed down, she just kept going, her breathing steady, her stride consistent. After 2 hours, the number of active runners had dropped to 15. The Volthin were starting to overheat, their plasma systems struggling with extended use. One of the Krallians had pulled a muscle and was limping. Kira kept running. Same pace, same breathing rhythm. Like she was some kind of biological machine programmed for exactly one task. After 3 hours, there were 8 runners left. The lead Krallian was wheezing. The Thoraxians had broken formation as individual soldiers began tiring at different rates. Kira kept running. I checked my datapad. She had completed 37 laps. Her vital signs showed elevated heart rate and respiration, but nothing approaching dangerous levels. Her body temperature was up, but well within human norms. She was sweating profusely, which apparently was some kind of biological cooling system humans used. By 3 hours and 45 minutes, there were only 4 runners left. The 2 Krallians, 1 Thoraxian, and Kira. The Krallians crossed the finish line at 3 hours 52 minutes, barely conscious, collapsing immediately. The Thoraxian finished at 3 hours 56 minutes, mandibles clicking with exhaustion. Kira crossed the finish line at 3 hours 58 minutes, breathing hard but still moving under her own power. She walked over to the water station, drank approximately 2 liters of water in one go, then sat down on the floor and started stretching. Commander Brutax walked over to her, staring down with an expression I could not quite read. "You are either stupid or insane," he said. Kira looked up at him, wiping sweat from her face. "Why not both?" she replied, grinning. "And that, as you humans say, was when I realized we might have a serious problem, or an opportunity. I was not sure which yet, but I was definitely going to need more incident report templates." The following 3 weeks were, without exaggeration, the most confusing period of my entire administrative career, and I once had to catalog a shipment of Volthian ceremonial weapons that had been mislabeled as kitchen appliances, so that is saying something. Kira Mendez should have failed. By every metric we use to assess combat readiness, psychological stability, and general monster hunting aptitude, she should have washed out in the first 72 hours. Instead, she kept not failing, which was somehow worse because I could not figure out why. The weapons training was the first indicator that something deeply weird was happening. Instructor Krell, a grizzled Thoraxian veteran who had personally killed more creatures than I had filed reports about, which was a lot, handed Kira a standard-issue pulse rifle. These weapons weigh approximately 30 pounds, fire concentrated energy bolts capable of punching through 6 inches of reinforced steel, and have a recoil that can dislocate a shoulder if you are not properly braced. "This is your primary weapon," Krell chittered, his mandibles clicking in the thoraxian equivalent of extreme skepticism. "Point at target. Squeeze trigger gently. Do not drop it. Do not shoot yourself. Do not shoot me." "Question. Just one," Kira said, hefting the rifle and examining it from multiple angles. "Why is the safety mechanism on the left side? Would not it make more sense to have it ambidextrous for species with different dominant hands? Or, different numbers of hands?" Krell stared at her for 5 full seconds. "Because that is where the safety mechanism goes. It has been in that location for 70 years across 400,000 manufactured units." "Right, but that is just tradition, not actual logic," Kira replied, still turning the rifle over. "I mean, I can work with it, but it seems like a design oversight. Also, the grip angle is weird. Is this optimized for thoraxian hands? Because it feels like it would be super uncomfortable for anyone with standard humanoid wrist articulation. Just shoot." "The target," Krell said, his voice taking on a tone that suggested his patience was approaching critical levels. Kira shrugged, raised the rifle, aimed at the target approximately 50 meters downrange and fired. She missed. By a lot. The shot went wide left, impacting the wall roughly 10 feet from the intended target. "See?" Krell said, sounding almost relieved. "This is why humans should not be in combat divisions. Insufficient hand-to-eye coordination, poor spatial awareness, inadequate muscle memory for complex weapon systems." "Huh," Kira said, adjusting her stance. "That felt wrong. The recoil is way more than I expected, and the sight alignment is off. Or maybe I am compensating for gravity that is not there. Is the gravity in here standard? It feels slightly lighter than Earth normal." "It is 0.98 standard," Krell admitted. "Barely noticeable." "I noticed," Kira said, firing again. This shot hit the target. Outer ring but still on target. She fired again. Inner ring. Again. Closer to center. By her 20th shot she was consistently hitting within 2 inches of the bullseye. Krell made a confused, chittering sound. "You are adapting," he said, like he was accusing her of a crime. "Mid-exercise, without formal instruction." "How?" "I mean, the rifle is giving me feedback, right?" Kira said, ejecting the spent power cell. "Every shot tells me something. Too high, too low, too much compensation for recoil. It is like I do not know, playing a video game. You die a bunch of times until you figure out the pattern, then you stop dying. Same principle." I made another note on my datapad. "Abnormal learning adaptation. Possible enhanced pattern recognition. Recommend neurological scan." The hand-to-hand combat training was even stranger. Commander Brutax himself oversaw this session, which involved recruits sparring against training drones, programmed to simulate various hostile entities. The drones were not set to kill, obviously, but they were absolutely set to hurt. Pain, according to Brutax's training philosophy, was the best teacher. The Krallian recruits went first, using their natural advantages of size, strength, and claws to literally tear the drones apart. Very impressive, very violent, lots of roaring. The Thoraxians went next, using coordinated hive tactics to overwhelm the drones through perfect teamwork. Also impressive. Then it was Kira's turn. The drone activated, a humanoid-shaped machine approximately 7 feet tall, equipped with mock claws and combat algorithms designed to mimic a Ren beast attack pattern. Ren beasts were nasty things from the outer territories, known for extremely aggressive behavior and a complete lack of self-preservation instincts. The drone charged. Kira did not charge back. She did not adopt any of the standard combat stances we had taught her. Instead, she did something that made absolutely no tactical sense whatsoever. She ran away. Not quickly. Not in a panic, just a steady jog, keeping exactly 10 feet ahead of the pursuing drone. "What is she doing?" Brutax growled. "I have no idea, sir," I replied, watching through the observation window. Kira kept running, the drone following with mechanical precision. She led it in a wide circle around the training area, maintaining that exact 10-foot distance. Then she did something even weirder. She ran directly at the wall, jumped, planted 1 foot against the vertical surface, and pushed off sideways. The drone, following its programmed pursuit pattern, ran directly into the wall at full speed. While it was recovering, Kira grabbed a training staff from the equipment rack, sprinted back and jabbed it directly into the drone's primary sensor cluster. The drone, now effectively blind, flailed randomly. Kira stayed out of range, watching its movement pattern. After approximately 30 seconds, she identified a gap in its defensive swings and moved in using the staff to strike at the knee joints, the elbow actuators, the neck servos. Each hit was precise, targeted at mechanical weak points. 2 minutes later, the drone was immobilized on the floor, completely disabled without Kira taking a single hit. Bruce was silent for approximately 10 seconds. "That was the least honorable combat I have ever witnessed," he finally said. "Did it work?" Kira asked, breathing hard but grinning. "It worked," Brutax admitted grudgingly. "It was cowardly dishonorable. And tactically sound. I hate it. Do it again." She did it again and again. Each time she found a different way to exploit the drone's programming, using environmental features, timing patterns, mechanical limitations. She got hit a few times, took some bruises, but she adapted, always adapted. By the end of week 3, Kira had somehow, impossibly, passed every basic training module. Not with the highest scores, mind you. The Krallians still dominated pure strength tests. The Thoraxians excelled at coordination exercises, but Kira passed every single one, which is how she ended up on the mission that changed everything. The distress call came from mining outpost Tharsis 9, a small facility on an ice moon orbiting a gas giant in the frontier sectors.
Population 47.
Primary export, frozen methane crystals. Threat letter, normally 0, except someone or something had killed 32 miners in the span of 6 hours. Commander Brutax assembled a response team. Himself, because he never sent troops where he would not go. 2 veteran Krallian hunters named Thrak and Gordza, a Thoraxian tactical specialist called HFY Unit 7, and because apparently the universe hated me personally, Kira Mendez. Oh, and me. Because I was still somehow responsible for her. Vortex, you will accompany the team as observer and record keeper, Brutax had announced. Document everything. If the human dies, I want extremely detailed notes for the inevitable inquiry. Sir, I am an administrator, not a field operative. I have never been in actual combat. My weapon certification expired 4 years ago. Renew it on the transport. We leave in 1 hour. Fantastic. Just fantastic. The transport flight to Tharsis 9 took approximately 8 hours through hyperspace. I spent most of it reviewing the preliminary reports and trying not to vomit from nervousness. Kelmorians have very sensitive digestive systems, and stress does not agree with us. The survivors, all 15 of them, had barricaded themselves in the main operations center. Their reports were fragmented, contradictory, and increasingly hysterical. Something had come up from the mining tunnels, something fast, something that killed in the dark, something that made sounds like screaming metal mixed with breaking glass. None of the facility's automated defenses had stopped it. The security drones were found torn apart. The reinforced blast doors had been carved through like soft cheese. Whatever this thing was, it was significantly outside normal threat parameters. We docked at the facility's emergency airlock at local time 2200 hours. The outpost was dark except for emergency lighting casting everything in that sickly red glow that never means anything good is happening. Brutax briefed us in the airlock chamber while we checked our equipment. Standard search and destroy protocol. HFY 7. You take point. Sensory advantage. Thrak and Gorza flanking positions. Human, you stay in the middle of the formation where we can see you. Vortex, try not to die. I do not want to file that paperwork. Questions? What if it is something we have not encountered before? Kira asked, checking her pulse rifle for the 3rd time. Then we kill it anyway and figure out what it was afterward. That is literally our job description. We entered the facility proper through the main corridor. The emergency lighting flickered occasionally, creating shadows that moved wrong. The temperature was approximately -40 degrees Celsius, because the environmental systems had failed. Ice crystals formed on any metal surface. HFY 7's antennae twitched, processing sensory data. Biological signatures detected. Multiple movement pattern suggests non-standard locomotion. Chemical trace indicates high sulfur content, acid. Direction? Brutax asked. Below, approximately 30 meters. The mining level. We proceeded to the elevator shaft. The elevator itself was gone, just a dark hole leading downward into absolute blackness. Gorsa attached a rappelling line to the shaft frame, and we descended one by one into the depth. The mining level was worse. Much worse. Bodies. Or what remained of them. The miners had not just been killed. They had been systematically dismembered, the pieces arranged in patterns that suggested either ritual behavior or an alien sense of aesthetics that I really did not want to understand. The walls were covered in a substance that looked like organic resin mixed with metal shavings. It reflected our flashlights in bizarre ways, creating optical illusions of movement everywhere. Spread out, Brutax ordered. Standard search pattern. Call out anything unusual. We moved through the mining tunnels in formation. Every sound was amplified by the ice walls, water dripping, metal creaking, our own breathing echoing back at us. Then Kira stopped walking. Wait, she whispered. What? Brutax growled. Listen. Do you hear that? We all stopped. Listened. Nothing. Just silence. I do not hear anything, Thrak rumbled. Exactly, Kira said. We should hear our own echoes. The tunnel acoustics should be bouncing sound back at us, but it is not. Something is dampening the sound waves, which means something is absorbing them, which means something is in here with us, that is designed to hunt in acoustic silence. HiveMind 7's antennae went rigid. She is correct. Sensory input indicates active sound absorption approximately 15 meters ahead. Large. Very large. Then the tunnel ceiling exploded. The thing that came through was, quite frankly, the most disturbing organism I had encountered in my entire career, and I once had to catalog a parasitic fungus that turned host bodies into mobile spore factories, so that was a high bar. It was roughly the size of a cargo transport. 16 legs, each tipped with razor-edged claws that looked like they were made from the same material as starship cutting tools. The body was segmented, covered in overlapping plates of what appeared to be organic metal alloy. The head, if you could call it that, was mostly mouth, 3 concentric rings of rotating teeth, each row spinning in opposite directions like some kind of biological industrial shredder, and it was completely silent. Even dropping through reinforced ice and metal, it made almost no sound at all. Brutax did not hesitate. He opened fire with his heavy plasma cannon, bolts of superheated energy slamming into the creature's carapace. Threk and Gorza followed suit with their own weapons. HiveMind 7 deployed electric pulse grenades. The creature barely seemed to notice. It moved with horrifying speed for something so large, those 16 legs carrying it across the ice like it weighed nothing. One of its claws lashed out, catching Gorza across the chest. His armor held barely, but the impact sent him flying backward into the tunnel wall with enough force to crack the ice. Fall back, Brutax roared. Controlled retreat. Do not let it separate us. We ran. Professional tactical withdrawal, as we would call it in the official report. Panicked sprinting. As I would describe it privately, the creature followed. Those teeth rings spinning faster, creating a sound like 100 angle grinders operating simultaneously. We made it back to the elevator shaft. Tharak and HiveMind 7 provided covering fire while Brutax hauled Gorza, who was semi-conscious, onto the rappelling line. Go! Go! Brutax shouted. I went, climbing that line faster than I had ever moved in my life, all 4 arms working in perfect terrified coordination. Below, I could hear weapons fire, plasma bolts, electric discharge, the screaming metal sound of those rotating teeth. Then I heard Kira's voice. Commander! The support struts. The support struts. What? The tunnel's support struts. They are holding up approximately 6,000 tons of ice. If we collapse the tunnel, we can trap. There was a pause that felt like an eternity. Then Brutax's voice. All units, target the structural supports. Bring it down. The sound of concentrated weapons fire echoed up the shaft. Then a groaning, cracking sound as ice and metal began to fail. Then nothing but rumbling as thousands of tons of frozen material collapsed into the mining tunnels below. I reached the top of the shaft, hauled myself over the edge, and immediately began inventorying who had made it out. Brutax emerged, his armor scored and damaged but intact. Thrake, bleeding from multiple lacerations but alive. HiveMind 7, missing 2 legs but still functional. Gorza, unconscious but breathing. And Kira, last one up. Her uniform torn and covered in that weird organic resin, but grinning like she had just won a competition. "Everyone accounted for?" Brotax asked, his breathing heavy. "Yes, sir," I confirmed, doing a quick head count. "Seal this shaft. We are leaving. Now." We made it back to the transport, launched, and were halfway back to Station Omega before anyone spoke. Finally, Brutax turned to Kira. "How did you know?" he asked. "Know what, sir?" "The acoustics, the structural weakness." "How did you know?" Kira shrugged, wincing slightly from what I suspected were bruised ribs. "I did not really. I do not know. Notice things." The way the echoes stopped meant sound dampening. The support struts had stress fractures visible in the emergency lighting. The creature was heavy enough to crack ice when it moved, which meant the tunnels could not support sustained combat plus that much weight. It just seemed logical that if we could not kill it directly, we could at least trap it long enough to evacuate. "You improvised," Brutax said slowly. "Yeah, I mean that is kind of what humans do, right? We are not the strongest or the fastest or the toughest, but we are really good at noticing stuff and making things up as we go." Brutax stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something I had never seen him do before. He laughed. Actually laughed. A deep rumbling sound that shook his entire massive frame. "Making things up as we go," he repeated. "The entire foundation of human civilization, apparently. Vortex, when we return to station, I want you to file a personnel report." "Sir?" I said, dreading what was coming. "Recommend Kira Mendez for full hunter status, effective immediately, and assign her to my personal strike team." "Sir, she has only been in training for 3 weeks. Protocol requires minimum 6 months before field assignment and 1 year before strike team consideration." "I do not care. She saved 4 lives today with improvised tactics and observational skills. That is more valuable than a year of standard training. Make it happen." I looked at Kira, who was trying very hard not to smile too widely and failing completely. "Yes, sir," I said, pulling out my datapad. And that, my friends, is how the Galactic Monster Containment Unit ended up with a human hunter who got there completely by accident and became one of our most effective operatives through sheer stubborn refusal to do things the normal way. Over the following months, Kira participated in 17 major hunts. She developed techniques that veterans had never considered. She improvised solutions to problems that should have required massive firepower. She survived encounters that should have killed her 3 times over. She also asked approximately 6,000 questions about everything, drove Commander Brutax to the edge of sanity at least twice a week, and completely reorganized our equipment storage system because apparently it was inefficient. I eventually stopped preparing incident reports for her, mostly because I could not keep up. She generated incidents at a rate that exceeded my administrative capacity. The other species in the GMCU started watching her operations, studying her tactics.
Humans,
It turned out, had a different approach to monster hunting. Not stronger, not faster, just different. Adaptive, creative, annoyingly persistent. 6 months after Tharsis 9, High Command issued a directive officially opening GMCU recruitment to humans. Within a year, we had 50 human hunters. Within 2 years, 200. They brought their strange perspective, their improvised tactics, their absolute refusal to accept that something could not be done just because it had never been done before. And the galaxy's monster population discovered, much to their profound dismay, that humans were persistence hunters on a galactic scale. You could outrun them, you could out-hide them, but eventually, inevitably, they would figure out some weird trick, some improvised solution, some completely insane tactic that should not work but somehow did. As for me, I was promoted to Senior Personnel Administrator for Human Integration, which sounds impressive until you realize it means I spend my days managing the most chaotic, unpredictable, question-asking species in the entire Galactic Defense Force. Kira still stops by my office once a week, usually with some new suggestion for improving bureaucratic efficiency or questioning why we do things a certain way. Last week she asked why requisition forms needed 7 signatures when 3 would be sufficient. I did not have a good answer. I filed the paperwork to change the policy this morning, because here is what I learned from Kira Mendez and every human who came after her. Sometimes the best person for an impossible job is not the one with the most training, the most experience, or the most qualifications. Sometimes it is the person who looks at the impossible and asks, very politely, why exactly it is impossible anyway, and then goes and does it just to see what happens. In log. Vortex. Senior Personnel Administrator, Galactic Monster Containment Unit, Station Omega. May the cosmos have mercy on us all.